Everyone knows the saying, all roads lead to Rome. But 2,000 years ago, China achieved the same thing. All roads led to Chang'an. The two statements sound almost identical, but they describe two entirely different road systems. Rome's roads were built like a net. China's roads were built like the spokes of a wheel, all radiating outward from the center, with far weaker connections between the spokes than between each spoke and the hub. This was not merely an engineering difference, it determined how two civilizations functioned at their peak, how they collapsed under pressure, and ultimately why they took entirely different paths for the next 2,000 years. One of the first things Qin Shi Huang did after unifying the Six Kingdoms was build roads. He ordered the construction of standardized highways called Qidao, radiating outward from Shenyang in every direction. Road widths were uniform, wheel gauges were uniform, even the specifications of the roadbed were standardized. This was not a transportation project, it was a control project. The empire prioritized building roads that led to the center, not roads that connected regions to each other. Within the official system, the most reliable and efficient routes typically ran through the capital. Commands flowed outward from the center, resources flowed inward from the periphery, and every line passed through the same point. Whoever controlled the roads controlled the flow of information, armies, and tax revenue. Qin Shi Huang did not merely build roads, he encoded the empire's power structure into the ground itself. When power becomes stone and earth beneath your feet, it is harder to change than any law. After unification, Qin Shi Huang made 5 grand tours of his empire, traveling along these very roads. His tours were not travel, they were system checks along his own control network, confirming that every spoke still connected to the hub. He died during his last tour on the road inside the system he had built. This radial structure became the default template for every Chinese dynasty that followed. The Han Dynasty maintained and expanded the Qidao network. The Tang Dynasty laid a relay station system across every corner of the empire, starting from Chang'an with a station every 30 li, allowing couriers to carry messages from the capital to the frontier within days. Relay stations were not just communication nodes, they were the empire's eyes for monitoring the provinces. The relay system primarily served the government, and ordinary people were largely shut out of this high-speed network. This meant the empire's monopoly over the most efficient information channels was physical, not merely institutional. An emperor sitting in Chang'an could learn what was happening thousands of miles away, make a decision, and send it back along the same line. The Sui dynasty's Grand Canal extended similar control logic from land to water, further reinforcing the one-directional flow of resources from south to north. The efficiency of this system was unmatched anywhere in the world at that time. But the cost of that efficiency was dependence. The entire system had only one center, and every channel pointed toward it. This radial network gave the empire two things. The first was efficiency. Commands from the center reached any location by the shortest path, and resources from the periphery flowed to the center by the most direct route. The second was an information advantage. The center possessed a comprehensive view of the whole system, while regions lacked equivalent channels of communication with each other. Information flowed far more slowly between local officials than between the center and any given locality. This made it nearly impossible for provincial officials to form lateral alliances against the center because they lacked efficient direct channels to coordinate. The empire's power did not rest on armies and laws alone. It rested on the shape of the roads themselves. When every efficient route leads to a single point, that point naturally commands an information advantage over everyone else. But this shape also determined what would happen when the system collapsed. Every time central authority fell, whether at the end of the Western Jin, the Tang, or the Yuan, what emerged in the provinces was not a set of independently functioning fragments, but chaos.
A system built around central coordination rapidly lost its capacity for unified command once the center was gone. After Beijing fell to Li Zicheng in 1644, the remaining Ming loyalist forces in the south descended into disjointed, uncoordinated resistance, not because communication between them was completely impossible, but because a system long dependent on central coordination had no habit or mechanism for rapidly building lateral cooperation. Once that center disappeared, the only exit from the chaos was to recreate a center. Every contender fought for the same thing, to become the new hub and reconnect every spoke to themselves. This is why periods of division in Chinese history always ended in war and reunification. Not because the Chinese inherently yearned for unity, but because the shape of the roads permitted only one outcome. There had to be a center, or the system could not function efficiently. Return to those two phrases from the beginning. All roads lead to Rome, all roads lead to Chang'an. They sound the same, but Rome's roads did more than converge on Rome. Provinces were connected to each other by extensive lateral links, and the Mediterranean itself served as a natural network of cross-connections. When Rome as a center disappeared, regions could still rely on their connections to one another to maintain basic economic and information flows. The empire shattered, but the fragments remained linked. This connected fragmentation eventually allowed Europe to develop independent cities, local self-governance, and a multi-centered power structure. China's roads led first and foremost to Chang'an, not to each other. When Chang'an disappeared, the fragments had far less to fall back on. The empire chose the shape of its roads, and the shape of its roads locked in the empire's fate. Qin Shi Huang encoded power into the roadbed, and every dynasty that followed used the same roads to transport grain, relay commands, and move armies. Institutions can be rewritten, emperors can be replaced, but once a road is built, it stays. A law can be abolished with a single decree, but a road takes decades and millions of laborers to rebuild. It outlasts any law ever written. Roads do not merely connect 2 points, they define the boundaries of what is possible. The empire built the roads, and the roads built the empire.